Welcome back to Bunter's Yard, and on the bench today we've got this this Jinty, this Class 3F, and I'm doing this video in response to this picture that I put on Instagram about a week ago, and a few people asked if I did a video of it, and I didn't, so I'm going to do that on this this video here. And so I want to see, this does actually run, although it's decided to not run, but it does actually go. It doesn't look like it's going to work, but it does. I think my battery might have had it, but I'm not worried about that too much for now. So on this video, there's no edits. I'm just going to record it straight from beginning to end. It's about 30 minutes, as you probably would have seen from the title screen. You don't need to work as quick as that. You can take much more time and much more care. But this is kind of just how I did the that Great Western pannier tank last week. So this isn't a bad condition. This is, I think, from the early 60s because of the chassis marking that's underneath. It says R52, which I think they finished in 1965 or something. It's had a few little repairs here and there, but generally it's not that bad. I've given it a kind of a bit of a clean. Not taking too much time. There's a bit some grease and oil, and I've got rid of that. So I want to sort of flat back these livery markings, the BR markings on the side, and some of the lines. And I'm going to use this Tamiya sponge. This is a 1500 sponge, I think, which is probably a little bit lightweight for what I'm going to do. We'll give it a go. It will fade it back at the least, anyway. Just really to take the sharpness of the lines away. We just want it to look like it's been sitting around for a while, and it's faded and the paint's come off and that sort of thing. So there's a few different ways of doing this. So this is with the Tamiya sponge, or you can use wet and dry, or there's other ways. We'll maybe try something in a little bit more aggressive. Let's get rid of that. And we've got these sort of wire pens. They come in different varieties. This is the brass one. Brass or copper? I'm not sure. Brass, isn't it? So this is a bit more sort of abrasive than that. A thing to do with those is just after you've done sort of etched away with that, it will leave deeper marks, and it can sort of catch some of the weathering. So as you start to weather, you'll start to see some of those brush marks come through. So you just need to flatten it back and smooth it off a little bit afterwards. That's what I do, and it's not kind of as obvious. So I'll try and put the link down below to those pens if you're interested. Now they come in a set of 3. Well, I bought them in a set of 3. You get that one, a steel one, and a fiberglass one. So they're different sort of grades. Anyway, quite useful. So we're going to start off our colours with this mud. Now you don't need to use exactly these colours. These are just what I've got to hand and what I've decided to use. If you're modelling it in a particular environment, then you use colours that you'll pick out from either the track or the loads or whatever part of the the environment you decide. But this is just a kind of generic sort of mud, and we're going to concentrate on the lower portions of this one. There will be a little bit more out the top, just on the lower portions of this, because that's where the track grime or the mud is going to sort of splash up. I'm not going to take too much. We'll worry about the wheels too much, although we need to at some point in the future give them a clean. I won't do them in this video, but I promise I will show this actually being clean and ready for the track again. So once the paint's on, which is when I'll create these sort of streaks from the rain, and I'm using this sort of flat brush. It's not particularly stiff, it's stiffish, if you know what I mean, mid stiffness. I'm sure there's a word for that. I'm sure someone will let me know what that word is. We're going to give it a couple of coats, and before it dries, as it's still the paint's still wet, we'll just brush it down. You can see, hopefully, those little run marks starting to appear. Just gives a bit of texture to the paint, rather than making it look like it's just painted on with an airbrush, which is obviously trying to avoid. Just trying to break up the the flatness of the paint. So you'll get different marks as you go around the Loco. Some will be marks from where the water has washed away, sort of rain streaks and that sort of thing, and there may be marks where people have walked on the surface of the Loco, and there'll be bits where people have brushed it with their hands, and there'll be all sorts of different marks anyway. So that's that side done, and we'll do the same on the other side. So this particular paint you would have seen is a Vallejo air. So Vallejo do basically there's two types, a Vallejo air and Vallejo colour. So model air, model colour. Now the model air, which is this one, most of the other colours are model air. They are pre-thinned, so you can use them straight in your airbrush. You can thin them down further if you want to, but typically you would just put it straight in the airbrush and start to paint with it. Basically, this is generally at sort of about 15 psi, so it doesn't need to be too much sort of pressure there, but just have a play around and see what you think works for you. And I'm trying as much as I can to use downward strokes, because obviously rain washes down and that's the way you want your streakers to go. Definitely not side to side unless you're creating sort of a look where it's gone through sort of hedges. If you've got hedges hanging over the edge of your track, you may have horizontal lines rather than vertical streaks. So so we're going to try and do a downward motion as far as we can. Some places are a bit tricky to get to, and you have to do an upward stroke. Hopefully we'll get away with that. So just a little bit more of this mud colour on these sides of the tanks here. And that's pretty much the first colour done, I think. Just pop that out of the way for a second. And a few people have asked about cleaning the airbrush. So in between colours, I'm not going to take too much time, especially if you're using just lots of different shades of brown. So I've got a pipette which has got water in it. It's plain cold water straight from the tap, and we'll just sort of slush it around with that, and you can see most of the paint then comes out. Do that as many times as you need to until it becomes pretty clear. Doesn't have to be totally clean, because we're going to put a different colour in it, and we can use another brown in a moment, a different shade of mud. So you just put some clear water in there, and you can see it's coming out pretty much clear, and that's as much as we need to do. I'll just wipe the cup out a little bit, just there's a few bits around the edge, get rid of them, and then we can start with a different colour. And we're going to use a different shade of brown. This is just brown violet. And again, it's a model air, which is denoted by the black cap. And you can see this a bit muggy around the top. It's always a good idea just to clean that off, because if you get any of those bits that have gone hard and they drop into your airbrush, they could easily cause your brush to clog. So just give that a little wipe before you start to drop it in there. And then we're going to go fairly similar. It's just to create a different colour and a slightly different feel. So in a similar fashion, you can see. So same again, just creating that the water streaks or the runs, the way that the mud would sort of wash down the side in the rain. And then we'll put some on the wheels and the chassis as well. We've got some different colours to go on that in a little while. We need to get something on there to start with, and on the rear as well. Now I haven't painted the decouplings on this particular one. I've just left them as they are. You'd normally paint them in to sort of match if you're going to keep them on. Rather than leaving them sort of gloss black. So yeah, just give them a little blast when you've got the relevant colour in. So just to break up the black plasticness of the rest of the Loco, just going to give it a very light dust of the same colour on the top, and just around the back there, and it just takes away that sort of stark blackness of the top. So we need to wash that one out again, so we'll clean this out, and the same as before, just a bit of water in there, slush it around, suck it out and dump it in a separate sort of container. I've got a couple of different pots, one with fresh water and one with where all the waste goes in. I've shown that before in a video. And a bit of fresh water in there, and that's now cleared. Clean the cup out, then we're ready to go. So our next colour is sand, and then you can use any. This is going to be used for like water runs for calcium deposits or whatever it's calcium, isn't it? From the water. So you may want to use white. I find that white's a little bit too bright, so I tend to use sand quite a lot. It's just a bright light colour. So once it's all weathered up, it's going to look the same anyway. So we're just going to put this where you think the water would streak down the edge. Has got to be completely sort of vertical, because some of the water would run down as the Loco's going along and be pushed back in a sort of diagonal like that. So it's just very slightly off the vertical. So we're using it from those valves at the top. Not sure if they're the whistles. They're not whistles, are they? They're probably some pressure valve. So there and there. Now we turn the pressure down just a little bit, and we get very close with the airbrush. We can get a little bit more precise with the line. We don't want it too thick, and we don't want it too opaque. So we want to be able to sort of see through. It's just supposed to look like some water has run down the side. That's it for that one. We'll give that a little clean out. And there's not a lot of wastage with these paints. There's just literally 3 or 4 drops each time that we do this, and it goes such a long way. These bottles last for literally years. I do lots of weathering. If you watch the videos, there's always something being done. And for instance, that sand, I think that's nearly 2 years old now, This is another colour called Smoke. Again, this is I've probably had this a year and a half or so, and it's probably not even half used. Now, Smoke is a model colour rather than a model air, and it's got a white cap on it, which means it needs to be mixed with thinners, so it's not thin enough to use straight from the bottle. And Smoke is a little bit different because it's kind of an opaque colour. When it goes on, it's just going to give a brown tint to whatever it is you're doing. So we're using the airbrush thinner. Generally it's 50-50. Sometimes I mix it down a little bit more, so I put more thinners in to make it a little bit thinner. Depends on what we're doing, because we're doing black. Probably don't want it too thin, otherwise you just won't see it at all. We give it a little mix, and then just blow it through just to get rid of any water that's in the nozzle from the previous clean, and then away we go. And we're just going to concentrate on the top of this, so that's where most of the smoke would go, I guess. So really just across the top of the boiler or the tank, and then a little bit on the roof. Again, it's just to take away that blackness of the plastic, so we just want to make sure that that's gone. And then we can use it in other places. It doesn't look too bad on the wheels as well. You can use that as like a grease oil residue. It's not too bad for that either. But I try not to use too much of it, otherwise everything goes brown in the end. So I'll clean that one out, and we're going to have another colour change. Put that away. And we're going to use black. And now this is again model air, so straight from the bottle. You can get this in a model colour, or even use black primer. I've used that before. They've all got the same sort of matte finish anyway, so we're going to use this around the funnel chimney just to create that sort of smoke look. Then a bit around the front, and then further back, as if the soot, as the loco's being going along, the soot has left a trail across the top of the loco. And then on those where the windows would be, we want that to be a bit mucky, because it's going to catch, being a flat surface, it's going to catch a lot of the soot and the grime. And then a tiny bit on the roof, and this just kind of blends it in, rather than having that distinct line between the black of where the windows are and the roof. And I like it to put a bit on the buffer beams as well. I'll try and get this towards the bottom. It's not particularly easy from this angle, but you tend to see lots of the pictures I've seen anyway. The buffer beams will have a thick black sort of greasy line towards the bottom of the buffer beam. That's kind of what we're trying to do here. Let me just give it a little brush back, just to give it a bit of texture. There we go, and we'll use the black as well in the centres of the wheels, just to give that congealed grease look, and then a little bit on these sort of leading and trailing edges of the the tank sides, and that just gives a bit of shape, a bit of form to the to those tanks. Now we're going to change the coal. We're going to add some real coal in there in a minute, but we'll just make it a bit muckier with some black. Just cover up that repair that someone's made before, and then same on this side, just a little bit on these where the axles come through, just to emulate the sort of old grease and oils, to make sure. No, so normally what we would do, we would spin the wheels just by sort of 90 degrees or so, and that would mean that any bit that's underneath those connecting rods, you could then paint. Otherwise you'll end up with a clean line going through the wheels, which isn't ideal. But my battery's not working today, and I haven't got another one. So, but this Loco does actually run, so I'll sort that out off camera. I have to trust me on that one, I'm afraid. So, just going to clean the airbrush out, and then we'll carry on with the next stage. And the next stage on this is going to be some weathering powders. So this is my my palette. It's a bit of a mess. Let's quickly tidy up before we carry on. Now I don't mind the colours mixing a little bit together, because it gives you different sort of tones. We don't want to keep everything, you know, the same colour. Rust is going to be lots of different shades, and there's going to be lots of variations between one and the other. So we've got black soot there, and then you can see the 4 rust colours around the outside, the yellows and the 2 rust and the dark rust. In the middle is the normal weathering powder from Hornby, dark earth, and then there's an ecru one, the white one over the back. So this dark rust I quite like. This is from Vallejo, comes in a kit. I'll put the link down below in the description to this particular set. It comes in a set of 4, I think. Very useful. I'm using a fairly largish soft brush just to apply these powders, and I'm going to be a little bit random because I say rust isn't particularly uniform. So you'll see me sort of go between one colour and another. Now this yellow is quite an interesting one to use. I like to use this just a little bit, just at the end of whatever we're doing. It just adds a little sort of yellow highlight. It's quite nice. And we'll have some rust down here in the in some of the joins. And along the front. Anywhere where you think the rust would appear, so especially in you know where joins are, and rivet lines and that sort of thing, because that's where the rust is probably going to break through quickest. I'm using this. It looks white. This is actually an ecru colour. It looks like there's not too much on there at the moment, but this washes away really easily, unfortunately. So I tend to go a little bit over the top with this ecru colour until I've used it, and then I'll buy a different one, and maybe my technique may change a little bit with this, but it does tend to get lost quite a bit. And there's probably a little bit too much rust that I really wanted, so we'll try and disguise some of that. So I think we use the Hornby dark earth. We'll do something similar on the other side, so it won't look too too obvious, but I think that's okay. And then we're using the Humbrol. This is Humbrol Black, which is a great one. It's got nice coverage on the Humbrol one. I've used the Vallejo Black, and I didn't particularly like it. But I think pigments work in different ways. The Humbrol one is just one that seems to work for the way I apply it, dry, rather than sort of mixing it down into a pigment with thinners or in some sort of medium. So take as much time as you need to do this. Just bear in mind that if you use a lacquer coat at the end, that some of these colours of the pigments might be sort of washed away or muted, and just sort of, I'm normally on standby when I apply the lacquer towards the end, that if the colour goes off a little bit more, then I'm ready to dot a little bit more in if I need to. So we're trying to make the top of that similar to the other side, so it doesn't look too unbalanced. Now I just use one brush. I don't mind mixing colours on the brushes unless you're doing something specific. Then this one brush does pretty much every colour that I've got, because colours the pigments will blend. Rust tones will be slightly different. That gives a nice little variety. And I leave these powders in the palette all the time. They're all ready to go, and you can see they do get mixed about, and the colours are not as sort of pure as they would be when they come straight out of the pot. But it works for what I want to do, so that's the way I'll work with that. So that's pretty much done. So our final coat is going to be our matte varnish. So this is the Vallejo one, and generally when I mix this in the airbrush, don't know why I do this different to any other colour. I'll pop the thinners in first, and then equals amount of the varnish afterwards. It just kind of stops you getting your first bit that comes out your airbrush is going to be sort of pure varnish, and we don't want that. So we put the thinners in first. At the worst, you'll get a bit of thinners, and then you'll get the varnish out afterwards. Just saves clogging perhaps. So we're going to give this a couple of coats. I'll give this one quick coat here, and this just kind of binds all the lacquers, all the powders on. Did like that little chunk down the bottom there, so we get rid of that. So this first coat, just a light sort of dust, will just hold everything in place. And then we can go back around it a bit later on with a second or third coat. Generally a couple of coats is enough with this. Just don't go too heavy, otherwise you start to get runs obviously. And in the back here, we'll just get some fresh coal rather than that plastic thing. And this is from the Hatton's Constructor range. I think this is medium coke or something like that, I can't remember. Anyway, one of those. It's definitely Hatton's one. They've got lots of choice, a lot of different size pots and bags, so give them a look. They're worth using. They're quite nice. Just adds another dimension to it. And then we're just going to add in PVA and water mix to 50-50. We'll let that set overnight or maybe two, and that'll be fine. Next time you see this, I'll hopefully be giving it a run on the layout, get it all cleaned and show you where we how we go about that. And that's pretty much it for today. So from start to finish, maybe a little bit rushed, but I just wanted to show you, you know, how quick that could be achieved. Thanks for watching today. I hope this was useful. Maybe some things that you picked up and you can use in your own modelling. Bye for now.